Hi, hello, welcome if you're new here, or welcome back. Either way, hi. Okay, first of all, I'm so sorry for not posting in a long time. Weather has been very bad where I live, so yeah. But as you can see, this is a Mondo Oowada ex-fam listener. This was actually a request, so the comment should be on the screen right now, hopefully. So yeah, I do not own this fanfiction, nor do I own the beautiful fan art used in this video. With that being said, hopefully you enjoy it. You don't understand, Soda. The female spoke in rapid English, making it hard for the mechanic to understand her. My class doesn't seem to like me, I'm telling you. They constantly bully me. Juan Ellen, the ultimate TN, was an exchange student from America. She was lucky that her host family was able to speak English as she wasn't very fluent in Japanese yet. Her host family treated her with much kindness, even though they didn't have a lot of money. Her classmates, on the other hand, were a different story. Her classmates tended to pick on her for her odd speech. She wasn't entirely well versed in Japanese, and sometimes her American vernacular would slip through. She had practically just given up speaking, for she didn't want to get bullied anymore. Have you tried talking to the headmaster Kirigiri about this? Kazuichi Soda asked her in English. He wasn't the best at speaking the language, for his heavy accent still shone through, but it was the thought that counted. His daughter's in the class. Wayne nibbled on her bottom lip, nervously averting his gaze. I really don't think he would appreciate me speaking ill of his daughter's class. Well, there's got to be someone in class that you can talk to. Kazuichi sighed when she just shook her head. Look, just try making friends with someone. All right, I've got to get to class. She bowed respectfully to him as she had been instructed to. Thank you for the advice. I cannot promise anything, but I will try. Good. He sent her a toothy grin, ruffling her hair. I'll see you after school, right? He walked away to go to talk to someone in his class, leaving her alone. Wen let out a heavy sigh, holding her books to her chest. She turned around, heading to her class. If she was being honest, she dreaded being in the same room as her classmates. It filled her with anxiety. Sure, there were those in the class that tried to make an effort, but they always ended up ignoring her or speaking very loudly, thinking that they would get their point across. They were very rude to her, to say the least, whether they realized it or not. Because she was so lost in her thoughts, she didn't even look up until she ran into someone. They both fell to the ground, books flying out of Juan's hands. Immediately, Juan began to apologize in her best Japanese. I'm so sorry. I wasn't looking where I was going. I didn't mean. She stopped upon realizing who it was. Leon Kawada stood up, towering over her. A sneer was on his face as he peered down at the girl. The female froze, face draining of all color. What the hell? He seethed, brushing the dust off his school uniform. What the fuck's wrong with you? Don't you know enough to watch where you're going? Maybe you should work on your Japanese while you're at it. Wine stood still, letting him berate her. She lowered her head, every insult thrown at her cutting like a knife. She clenched her fists at her sides, trying not to let the tears fall. Mondo Oowada ceased his conversation with Kiyotaka Ishimaru upon hearing the yelling. He stopped talking, craning his head, craning his neck to see what all the commotion was about. He frowned as he saw Leon harassing the new exchange student from America. He had only heard the girl talk a few times since she had been here, and it seemed she was in another period of silence. She let Leon criticize her, doing nothing about it. Gyotaka seemed prepared to give a scolding to the ultimate baseball player, but Mondo stopped him. There were some things that the biker had to handle himself. Oi, Leon, what the hell's wrong with you? He approached the red-haired boy, anger written across his face. Don't you know better than to bully someone? She ran into me, Leon explained, shouting back. Besides, it's not my fault if the brat can't speak Japanese for shit. Maybe she should just go back to her own country. Ooh, I'm not liking this loan. Where were we? Oh, okay. Wen watched as the intimidated biker approached, fear in her eyes. She did not want two people ganging up on her. She'd be dead for sure. She watched as the two males screamed at one another in rapid Japanese, and she did her best to decipher what they were saying. She didn't catch a lot of it, but she clearly heard the last part. Go back to her own country. Tears welled in her eyes as she registered what Leon was saying. She averted her gaze, going to pick up her books. Maybe he was right. Maybe she didn't belong here. Leon had stormed off, leaving Juan and Mondo alone in the middle of the hallway. Wow. She turned around to grab the last book she had dropped, only to see Mondo offering it to her. Cautiously, she took the book, slowly standing up. Mondo offered her a grin, and she didn't know how to feel about it. She pressed her books against her chest, examining him. He was highly intimidating, causing her to cower in fear. That bastard didn't hurt you, did he? She was taken aback at how rough his voice was. She looked into his eyes, shaking her head. No. Well, that's a relief, Mondo exclaimed, making sure to say very clearly so she couldn't understand, but not too much so she wouldn't feel offended. Don't worry about Leon. He's just an idiot. I bet this happens a lot, doesn't it? She looked away, nodding, noodles, nodding shyly. He laughed, putting a hand on her shoulder, causing her to wince. She looked back up at him, surprised to see he wasn't hurting her. Why don't you eat lunch with me, Chi and Taka, today? Mondo questions. Unless you have other plans. Wen gave him a thumbs up, signaling she was up for lunch. He grinned, walking away, her face paled. Paled? What is? What had she gotten herself into? What have you gotten yourself into, huh? The HC female puffed out her cheeks before speaking in rapid English. Her sentence seemed more and more rushed with every breath she took. Soda, Oowada wants me to sit with him at lunch. What the fuck do I do? She was shaking him by the shoulders, beginning to hyperventilate. Her words began to slur together, becoming one big mess. What if I say something in English and he doesn't understand? One seemed ready to burst into tears at the mere thought. Her body shook with nerves, and she looked at the mechanic, unable to focus on one object. Wait, Oowada? Kazuichi stopped her eyes wide. Mondo fucking Oowada, leader of the Crazy Diamonds, wants you to sit with him at lunch? Wine. You've got to sit with him. He's the leader of a gang, for crying out loud. You don't want to get in his bad side. Oh my god. She buried her face in her hands, letting out a loud groan. Are you kidding me right now? Looking up, her eyes landed on Mondo Oowada, who was arguing her over. She tensed up, face becoming pale. She bit her lip, shaking her head slightly. I've gotta go, Wen told the male, glancing in the direction of Mondo. Please wait for me after school. I'm afraid this is either going to go well or terribly wrong. She waved goodbye to the pink-haired male, beginning her march to her doom. She arrived at Mondo's side, and the biker immediately shot her a grin. I was beginning to think you were going to bail on me. He chuckled, softly scratching the back of his neck. Come on, Chi and Taka are waiting for us. One slightly followed him, rigging her hands nervously. Kazuichi's words rang in her ears. You don't want to get in his bad side. Biting her bottom lip, she suppressed a groan. What if she messed all this up? What if Mondo hated her? What if he flipped out on her, and her whole class would shun her? Worry and dread ate her up inside as she followed Mondo to his usual lunch table. She sat down with him and his friends, beginning to eat her lunch. She had admitted the Japanese made really good food. Mondo and his friends began to talk, and Wan zoned out, eating her lunch quietly. Suddenly, Kiyotaka's voice snapped her out of her thoughts. So, what do you think? She lifted her head up, immediately blushing red in embarrassment. Oh, fuck, what the hell were they talking about? She hummed in knowledge, hoping the rest would be cleared up. We were talking about going to the park this weekend, Kiyotaka clarified. Would you like to join us? Her breath hitched her throat. They actually wanted to hang out with her. She pursed her lips, trying to figure out how to respond. My Japanese isn't very good, she told them, the foreign language seeming awkward on her tongue. So speaking the language is a little hard for me, but to answer your question, I'd love to. The end of the school year had arrived, and Wine had to admit she was going to miss Hope's Peak. Sure, her first few weeks had been a little rough, but if it wasn't for Mondo stepping in, she wouldn't be friends with the majority of her class. Mondo had been formed a tight bond together, so sometimes she wouldn't even have to speak. He would just understand. He introduced her to his gang, which the members were actually very friendly guys. He even helped her perfect her Japanese, so by the end of the school year, she was speaking more fluently. Yes, her year in Japan had been eventful, no doubt. She was really going to miss this place. She was especially going to miss Mondo. Wan stood in the airport, ready to board her flight. She exchanged goodbyes with her friends and host family, promising to stay in touch. She would never forget them. Thank you for hosting me, she said, bowing respectfully to the sodas. Sodas. They merely laughed, pulling her into a hug. She approached Mondo. Sorrow looked in her eyes. She gave him a sad smile, bowing to him as well. So, this is it. She trailed off awkwardly, not sure where to go with this conversation. Thank you for everything. Honestly, if it wasn't for you, I'd probably have been back home 4 months ago. Unexpectedly, she threw her arms around him, EC eyes glistening with tears. I'm gonna miss you, you know. He hugged back, inhaling her scent one last time. He closed his eyes in a feeble attempt to make the moment last longer. I know. She pecked him on the lips, and his eyes shot open to see her standing there with a cheeky smile. She innocently laughed, pulling back from the hug. I promise I'll visit, Wen told him as her flight was called. And I'll text you every day. Please don't forget me, Mondo. I won't. Not me crying. The HC female smiled sadly, walking backwards towards where her flight was boarding. She waved at her friends and classmates, a bright smile on her face. I'll never forget you. Oh shit. I'll never forget you guys. Once her flight, she stared out the window, a look of nostalgia in her eyes. She watched the ground grow smaller beneath the plane until it had disappeared. She leaned back in her chair, letting out a constant sigh. Sure, she learned Japanese, but after leaving Japan, she was pretty sure she picked up another language, the language of love. Okay, but dude, I have tears right now, Tim. Damn. Yeah, that story, the end. Why? Why did it have to end like that? Even she's crying. I do not own this fanfiction, nor do I own the beautiful fan art used in this video. With that being said, hopefully you enjoy it. And these are just some weird things that happened during the filming, recording of this video. So you can easily just, ooh, that's a hole in my sock. Okay, that's it. She's in the band. Her neck. Crack. What the fuck do I do? Besides, it's not my fault. What